Dr. J revealed his top 10 NBA players of all time on Chris Haynes' Posted Up podcast, and one notable absence, LeBron James. I'm Robin Lundberg here with Wilton Jackson and Ben Pickman. And guys, Dr. J justified leaving LeBron off because of LeBron's role in forming super teams, which have always existed throughout NBA history. LeBron didn't create super teams. He just sort of changed the way they came together. And what I find funny about this is Dr. J, you could argue, played on a super team with Moses Malone, Maurice Cheeks, Bobby Jones, and Andrew Toney. His first team there that is featured had Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and Wilt Chamberlain, who all played on the same team. And whether we're talking about the Celtics, the Lakers, the Bulls, there's all these super teams, hell, even the Spurs. I just don't know why it's different in how you view it if it's put together by the players. And I still don't think it's justification for leaving LeBron James off of any list, Wilton, when he clearly belongs. Perhaps we need to remove the doctor title from Mr. Julius Erving for this take.
You know, Robin, maybe you could remove the doctor title, but I'll say this. I don't think LeBron created the super team concept. I really think more so the fact that he modernized it. When you really go back and look through NBA history, and you mentioned this, you've seen players, great players play on the same team. Think back to Bill Russell with the Celtics, the Showtime Lakers, the Bulls. You're talking about the Spurs with Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, the Lakers. I mean, and then you even talk about the Celtics in the early 2000s. So when I look at this and think about this, LeBron James modernized the concept more so of the fact that he has had the ability to get teams and general managers and coaches to buy into his wants and desires when it comes to making postseason or even midseason shifts for player personnel to get other players to play with. I mean, look at his decision to go play with Miami and getting Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. So when you think about that, James, we put him on this pedestal as, for some, the greatest of all time or one of the greatest of all times, but he had to join, other superstars in Miami, in Cleveland, in LA with Anthony Davis and company. So when you think about that, most people forget that he tried to do it in Cleveland the first time, but he didn't have a bunch of talent with him on those first Cleveland teams when he got to the league. So the way that he's been able to play with these other players and to win his championships, I wouldn't necessarily say he changed the idea of creating super teams, but he definitely modernized it because we definitely saw it with the Warriors, and now we're seeing it with the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, yeah, whether you microwave a hot dog or you boil it on the stove, it's still a hot dog, right? That's part of what I don't get about it. And you reference it. We've seen LeBron elevate teams. We saw him take the 2018 Cavs to the finals, the 2007 Cavs to the finals. We've seen teams fall off when he leaves. And you mentioned it. He went against a super team without another superstar because the Celtics had Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Rajon Rondo. So there's no justification for leaving LeBron James. I think he's the greatest player of all time. We can argue about that. But out of the top 10, what this also seems to me, Ben, though, is Dr. J bigging up his era, right? Because Michael Jordan's not even on the first team. Kobe Bryant's not on the list as well.
Yeah, and we've seen this time and time again of players from one era really holding near and dear the players they played against and putting them on a pedestal compared to modern day. Of course, it's the back in my day phenomenon. It seems a little silly to bash Dr. J too much for this. I think anyone who really is a watcher of basketball, observer of basketball, knows LeBron James's greatness, knows that he is 1, 2, 3 all-time in all-time rankings, and this is just kind of Dr. J holding on tightly to his era. And Wilton and you both mentioned it, Robin, right? LeBron didn't invent the super team per se. It's more so this era of player empowerment, of going from one team to your next, the player really being in control about what team they want to be on. But if you look at it, LeBron and so many others, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, they're benefiting from the context in which they play in another way. You look at the CBA and the union and what it's set up to do. It's set up to incentivize shorter contracts in many ways. You look at someone like Kevin Garnett. When he came into the NBA in the late 90s, those guys would sign these albatross deals that would lock them into one franchise for 5, 6 years at a time, 7 years at a time. It would give the team full control, and teams weren't happy with that predicament either. And so they went back and they said, let's do 3, 4-year deals, max deals at that, super max deals at that. And that's given players like LeBron, Kawhi, these other stars, more flexibility, more agency to control where they want to go. So context is everything, whether it's Dr. J's rankings or LeBron James and other stars moving. This is a kind of ridiculous comparison from one era to the other. Of course, though, LeBron is in, the top 3, top 2 of players of all time.
Yeah, he likes to quote Jay-Z, so do I. He could go with I'm supposed to be number 1 on everybody's list. Let's see what happens when I no longer exist.